All right, welcome to the podcast. How are you guys doing today?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Brynn, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. So I'm here with Brynn and Liam. So Liam Campbell, Brynn Kiley from Manitoulin Streams. Now, Manitoulin Streams is an organization, a not-for-profit organization here on Manitoulin Island that does a ton of the riparian work on the watersheds. They do, well, you guys tell me what you guys do in your minds. Liam, what do you guys do?
So the focus for the organization is mostly stream restoration, riparian restoration. We've done work all across Manitoulin Island, including Wiki, and I think the furthest west we've gone is Shrigley Creek. So that's like near Poplar, for anybody that's familiar with that. But it's mostly just going into areas where streams have been degraded or damaged due to either development or agriculture, and kind of just checking them out, seeing what they need, and restoring the habitat so that it's better for all of the spawning fish species that we have around the island. So mostly just making sure that they actually have somewhere that they can come in and lay their eggs and finish their life cycle if they're salmon and other fish as well, including like walleye. Brook trout is another big focus fish for us. So that's the main goal of the organization, is to make sure that there's habitat there for them to reproduce and continue their life cycle.
And for people to enjoy, for property owners, right, that are trying, this is expensive work to do that kind of thing. And everyone, everyone gets to benefit from it when it comes to improving the habitat, improving the fishery, improving tourism. Now, so when we look at how Manitoulin Streams came to be, now I sit on this board, so I'm kind of biased, and it used to be there used to be two standalones, right? One was Manitoulin Area Stewardship Council, and one was Manitoulin Streams, and they almost had both boards were made up of the same group of people, and we were kind of cutting each other's grass there a little bit in terms of funding applications, and it was double the meetings and what have you. And back, I don't know how long ago that would have been.
Like the merger was around 2007.
Right. Yeah. So it's been a while then. I can't remember if I was on it for that long. I guess I have been. But because I was originally as a part of Manitoulin, the Stewardship Council, right? And we amalgamated and took a couple of those board members over and formed basically just one not-for-profit organization, and that was the Manitoulin Streams. So it did broaden our reach, because Manitoulin Area Stewardship Council, they did do things that were not necessarily stream related, but still environmentally related. And so I think when we were looking at trying to find the niche for Manitoulin Streams, we broadened a little bit of that definition of how far we could reach out. And an example would be Deer Save, right? So this is a big initiative, especially when the winters are particularly harsh for our deer population, that we go out and we do, what do we do when we do a Deer Save?
Most of Deer Save is just clearing kind of trails for the deer. So in winters where it's particularly harsh and there's lots of snowfall, it's more difficult for them to actually move around. So a lot of it is just kind of clearing the trails, making sure they have paths to get to their feeding areas and winter yards and stuff like that.
Right. And we put out a call. This was a few years back. But people need to understand, when deer in the winter time, when they go to their deer yards, and basically it's usually where there's a lot of cedar, because that's what they subsist on. They if the winters are particularly harsh and that snow is deep, they don't do anything. They don't go looking for food. They just stand there, right? And if they're standing around getting weaker and weaker, just hoping that the weather turns and the snow starts to melt so they can move around to food sources, they become easy pickings for coyotes. And any deer hunter on Manitoulin knows that we also have a ton of coyotes, and their favorite food is, well, maybe not favorite food is deer, but when they're plentiful and easy to pick off, they definitely consume, those animals. So with Deer Save, packing down the trails just allows them to get to the next cedar patch and move around a little bit better. And what we ended up doing was we put a call out a number of years ago, and it was amazing, the response in terms of hunters sending dollars in to as donations to pay for contractors to come in with big equipment, because you can pack down the trails with a snow machine, sure, but I mean, when we're doing it on this type of a scale, you want to have access to bulldozers and those types of things to pack those trails down. And the community, the hunting community, and the deer, the nature community responded, and they did. And from that call out, which was a few years ago.
I think it was before I even worked there.
Yeah, we were able to respond, and we still have those dollars in reserve funds, ready to be used when we need to for Deer Save. So that's an example of, of a little bit further reach for Manitoulin Streams in terms of conservation in general. A great example because, as hunters know and as nature lovers know, that Manitoulin has always had, touch wood, a real good deer population. Right, despite the numbers of hunters that we see here on the island in hunting season, we still we keep the population in check, actually, versus taking a big dent out of that. But that's all a part of what Manitoulin Streams does. The maps and deer yards are it's just cool information to have a look at. So that's how Streams has come about. It's a fantastic organization that pretty much does all of I don't know of any other group that does the riparian work, right?
Especially not in Northern Ontario. We're the only group in Northern Ontario doing this type of work.
And so it's exciting in that regard. And it also has a huge economic boost, right? I mean, obviously our industry is tourism, and the work that gets done on the major tributaries like the Manitou, the Kag, and even the smaller ones, right, have a big draw. Now I saw, I think it was, I don't know if it was your dad that posted a picture of the Kagawong River, but the waterfalls is crazy. Have you been down there?
Not since it's melted. Last time I was there's a big heap of ice still.
Yeah, so it is flowing like a son of a gun down there right now. Like the pool it's full. I have never seen it like that.
Well, with the amount of rain we've had in the last week and a half too, it's pretty crazy. I was just there today before I came here, and the flow even at the mouth is like incredibly strong right now. So, right.
And I did hear that the fishing is turning on there. Suckers are spawning now like crazy, as are walleye, and so those rainbows are coming in, and if you're not using sucker spawn or something similar to that, you're not going to be as successful in terms of catching those fish, because right now that's what they're feasting on and gorging on is the sucker spawn. So now you guys have been with Manitoulin Streams for how long, Brynn?
I think this is my 5th year.
5th year. So you started as a summer student, correct?
Yes. Up until last summer, I technically was still a summer student, and now I'm on my 1-year-long internship.
Nice. Now, how did you, so what did you go to school for?
Biology.
Okay. And that was at, Guelph. I should know this, Guelph. Yeah, because I remember I took you back down to school one time. And I know Brynn's family for a long time. Her mom was one of the teachers at the school that I was a principal at. Fantastic educator. A plug in there for Miss Connie. So you went to school for biology. You did a ton of summer work, right? Getting your hands dirty out in the field, doing all kinds of exciting things. And now what do you do for Streams?
Now we're basically just planning the outdoor angling trade fair that's happening this May long weekend, and that's largely what I've been doing during my internship, with some other things like the salmon tours and like the walleye spawning activities with the kids in the past week. And
So now the walleye spawning, is that still happening at Bass Creek?
I believe it is still happening. The Little Current Fishing Game Club just released some of their fingerlings, I think, the other day.
Right. This is a fantastic program. I used to work down at Whitehaven Cottages, sort of work because it was a cool job. White slaving, and that's where Bill and Linda Strain are good friends with their kids. They have a tributary, Bass Creek, that flows from Bass Lake out into the North Channel. And I remember back in 1987 or 88, because Bill sent me a picture. So this was probably before you guys were born. Not that I'm that old. These guys are really young, right? He sent a picture of me in one of the shocking boats with the MNR when we were getting those original stock out of Windfall Lake, right? And we would go out and you get the walleye from there, and that created this this hatchery project. And Little Current Fish and Game has been doing this for decades, and is a direct result of how good the fishery has become in the North Channel for walleye, right? There's some, the fish that come in those nets into the trap nets
are huge.
Like, how big do you think the biggest one you've seen is?
In terms of poundage, it's hard to say because they're pretty large at that size just because they're full of eggs. But I've seen almost a 2.5 foot walleye coming out of those nets before.
Absolutely. So. Like, I'm talking, I think the biggest we saw was like 14, 15 pounds. Like, these things are massive, right? And, any one of those females can have up to 300,000 eggs, right? That they release. But the thing is when they release them in the wild, the hatch rate is what? What is the hatch rate? Or what's the fertilization rate of that? Do you guys know?
It's significantly lower. I think somewhere between 5 and 10%
of fertilization. And then the hatch rate is, of those 5%, I think is 1 to 3%. So we're talking,
barely any.
Yeah. And then when those fish reaching maturity, right? Again, the orders of magnitude less. So, and I have a hard time with this. Is when I see a walleye, right? And because in Lake Mindamoy, a walleye are more of a rarity than let's say yellow perch or ling or whatever. I treat it with such regard, like when we catch a walleye here. And we're hoping that through programs like this, like the walleye project, that kids take a look at that. And when they see a fish like this, right, one, they're thinking about food sovereignty. That's a real thing, right? Because walleye tastes great. There's no denying that. Probably one of my, I don't know, I love every kind of fish, really. So having a favorite doesn't really... If you had to choose a favorite fish, what would it be to eat?
I don't know. I like some of the less fishy types of fish. Yeah. So whitefish is a good one. Okay. Trout is good too, though. It's not too fishy.
You don't think trout's fishy? I think trout is fishy as hell. But I guess it depends on how you cook it. You?
Ling is delicious. No, that is the tastiest fish I've ever had.
So I would agree. And so many people that I ice fish with are like, don't eat ling. And I'm like, well, have you ever been to a fish fry at my place? And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, then you've eaten ling. Because we keep all of our ling and we throw that mystery meat right into the perch bag, right? And no one can tell the difference. When you cook it, though, if you're cooking just ling in isolation, do you do it like a lobster boil, or do you just fry it?
Similar to a lobster boil.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what it tasted like. It was just so buttery and creamy, kind of. So, and the one time I had ling, we actually had caught a whitefish and we made fish tacos out of the two of them. Yeah. Just to see the comparison, and hands down the ling tasted better.
Yeah. I would agree. You need almost double the butter to make a whitefish, or in this lake, everyone calls the Cisco a whitefish too, but the Cisco are super fishy tasting, right? In my mind. So you really need to drown that thing in butter first, and then just drink the butter, right, in my mind. But the ling are a delicious fish. It's the what is it? The freshwater lobster or the poor man's lobster? Excuse me. So anyway, I digress. So you've been doing the Manitoulin trade, or the angling trade fair, but before I want to save that because there's some interesting things I want to talk about there. Your biology degree from Guelph, internship for a year. So when's your year up?
September.
September. What's your plans for September?
I don't know.
The world is your oyster?
Yeah, I'm waiting till after the trade fair to even think
about it. Because, I mean, so when people think, I love saying that I'm on Manitoulin Streams, right? Because as a board member, I don't really do anything. And the board always has gets all the credit, right? But really, you guys know, and we do too, that the work is done by you guys, right? Like you guys are out there clearing rivers, like of log jams. You're the ones with your hands dirty planting trees. You planted as a summer student, right? Like those first couple summers,
thousands of trees, and just repotting them too when they come in. So
yeah.
Now, who's that repotting?
Ken Pierce.
Ken Pierce. Oh my God, I forgot his name for a second. Just for a second, Ken. Golden. This guy is awesome. I love Ken. He's potted hundreds of thousands of trees, and probably planted just as many on Manitoulin. If you're looking in the bush, there's a tree in there that Ken Pierce has had his hands on at some point in its life cycle. So big hats off to volunteers like him, because this is what makes Manitoulin Streams work, right? Is not only the tiny paid staff that we have, but it's also the countless volunteers that go out and do things like, garbage pickup was a big one.
Right? Yeah, just this past month.
I mean, I don't know how many bags of garbage I saw on Facebook, but
in total there was 270 that happened just during the month of April. But since then, I think there's been another 40 or 50 bags that have been collected, and people have sent in photos too. So folks that are listening here, this is important. This is such a big deal. And when we were doing a program at Lakeview School, it was Manitoulin Streams related, where we were doing the bioengineering component with the brook trout and for walleye and brook trout at the school in the summertime, because we had a balanced school year. Our kids were back in school in the summer, in August. And that's when the bulk of your work can happen, or has to happen, because you can't go into the streams in September, I think. Yeah, there's an in-water working period that basically is just a couple of months in the summer, and that's legally the only time we're actually allowed to do in-water work.
Right. And so when we were doing this with our school program, I remember this kid in his second year, after we had taken almost a dump truck full of garbage out of the Chicken Creek, right? And we went back the next year to do the same thing. That next summer, there wasn't as much garbage because it hadn't been done in years. We were picking stoves out of there and bicycles and like everything, right, that you can imagine. That little guy, who is now in grade 8, was like, "What the hell? I thought we just did this," right? And I'm like, "Yeah, you did. And this is how much was thrown back in." And he's like, "Man, like who's doing that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Have you ever taken a wrapper and just thrown it on the ground?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, then you're doing it." Right? And he's like, "Son of a bitch." Like it needs to be taught at such an early age, right? That all things on the ground end up in the water system, right? At some point or other. And I'm not going to get started on our waste station transfer areas, because it's brutal. Like it is brutal, what we're doing even locally, right? And when we're having these discussions about conservation and environmental protection and all of that, I mean, we don't need to look very far, right, to see how big of a violator each of us is. Like I'm a violator of this as much as I don't want to be, in terms of what I throw away, right? In terms of what the community throws away and we take to a transfer station under the guise that it's going to be recycled, which it isn't, right? It isn't.
Most of it just gets sent off to a different country.
Or we bury it right here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, when we take this, I think it's like 3% of this actually gets recycled if it makes it to recycling, right? And so it's one of those things that trying to get an awareness of this, you know, at a young age is critical, right? And teaching our young ones. I mean, I'm sure in those 270 bags that were turned in, like there's a lot of Tim Hortons stuff in there, and people were upset about having a franchise like Tim Hortons here, right? Saying this is what's going to happen. Well, yeah, it's Tim Hortons cups, right? That we're picking up, but it's not just because it's Tim Hortons. Whoever's throwing those out was throwing out whatever it was they were drinking beforehand, right? So if it was a pop can, if it was a whatever, they're throwing them out, right? And so it's this notion of awareness, and I really think that it's good. It's that old adage of bad publicity is good publicity, even when we're showing these 270 bags of garbage, right? And it's just like, son of a gun. How is that happening? It's an awareness. It's like, because if it's out of sight, it is out of mind, right? And when we're seeing that, we're thinking. The other day, I was going to the dump with my own garbage, and there was a garbage bag blown out of someone's truck, right? And I stopped and picked it up. And I put it in my truck. It's not a big deal, right? But I was thinking all the way to, I'm like, this is just going to get thrown back on the ground when I take it to the dump, right? I mean, what am I doing? I don't know if it's actually making a difference by me taking the garbage to the dump, other than putting it in one place, right? Until we take an active role. And I think that's a big part of what Manitoulin Streams does is this, even if it's awareness, right? Of getting people aware about what's happening in our environment and to our environment as a result of our action or our inaction. And I think that's important. So in terms of how you got here, how did you get to Manitoulin Streams?
I actually got the job through Jesse Bowden. He basically called me up as soon as I graduated university and asked me if I wanted to take over his position. And that was a lot easier than applying to jobs and looking for them. But it was also just good to be able to like actually come back home and essentially use the education that I got to actually help Manitoulin. So it's nice to be working essentially where I was born and raised and giving back to the environment around here as well.
Right. Now you went to school where?
I went to Carleton University for environmental science, and then I went to Algonquin College for environmental management and assessment.
Oh, so perfect. You're like super qualified. Both of you guys are super qualified for this type of position. Jesse is also a board member and a proud team member of Fuel the Fire TV. So, and as the podcast as well, he's been on it and helps run the podcast. And was a former employee as well at Manitoulin Streams. So definitely a versatile young guy and important part of the Manitoulin Streams project. So what's your role at Manitoulin Streams?
It's kind of changed over the years. So when I first started, I never did the summer student positions. I got on like full time right away, but I was essentially doing the summer student kind of work throughout the rest of the year when we didn't actually have summer students at first. But now I am more the outreach coordinator kind of thing. So any of the community events that we've got going on, I'm kind of generally spearheading them. I've got a Rangers program for kids from grade 1 to 8 that I run in Kagawong at least once a month. So that's just anything that I can really think of to teach the kids is what I do. The garbage cleanup event, a lot of organizing that and stuff. anytime anyone asks us to come speak basically about something environmental, I'm the main speaker that goes and delivers that information. So just because it was Earth Month, I was at Little Current Public School talking to the kids about freshwater fish, the ones that they can find on the island, where they can find them in the lake. And then even just talking about climate change and how that's going to impact where they might live actually in the lake. But originally, so when I first got hired on, the focus for my position was about climate change and basically trying to establish trends for Manitoulin to see what we can kind of expect in the future, just in terms of weather and climate and stuff like that.
Now, I do remember your presentations to the board. They're tracking temperatures and rainfall amounts, and it was quite an extensive report. Is that available online or on the website?
I believe that it's on our website. It hasn't been updated in a couple of years, but as far as I remember, the trends that we've been seeing in the last few years basically aligned with everything that I had outlined in that report.
Right. Yeah. Things like temperature, like our summer, son of a bitch, like this last summer, June and July were blistering. Like, I remember being out here and there being just zero wind, no rain, super hot, right? Like by 10 in the morning, it felt like it was 30 degrees, right? Which, has an impact on obviously on everything in terms of fire hazard and whatnot. That's, Manitoulin is relatively safe when it comes to environmental like tragedies, right? I mean, we've averted some. We never did get the big tire fire on the west end of the island that would have screwed us all. We rarely have. We may get a tremor from an earthquake in Sudbury once every 20 years. We did have those twisters, like the micro bursts that did come down like once in the last 20 years. Those, I mean, but the Cambrian Shield, we're pretty stable here. But one thing we're not immune to, and in terms of environmental disasters, is fire, right? We're surrounded by trees. I mean, you guys came in here, like if there's a forest fire, I'm basically screwed, right? And that last summer was the first summer that I was like really worried, because it was so dry. And the reason that I really felt that was that in June, Jesse and I go up to Hearst, and we do a bow hunt for bears with Wesley Bow Guides. And it's swampy up there. You're going through the bushes. It's wet. Black flies are and mosquitoes are unbearable, right? But when we were walking up there in the first week of June, it was like a tinderbox, right? Like it was literally you could tell that we should have been in swamp wetland just because of the way you could see where the water lines were on the trees, and those were bone dry everywhere we went, in terms of tracking bears. And so when we got back, I just couldn't stop thinking about how big of a deal that would be, because we were experiencing that same drought here at that time with that blistering heat. And it doesn't even take an errant cigarette. It could just take a bottle, right, that someone has tossed out the window, right, or at a dump, right, catches the right sun ray and focuses that light, because it's already hot, right? So the core temperature is already high, and boom, right, we're battling. We have every active firefighter on the island trying to battle a blaze that the island did burn, right, at one point in history. I'm not really sure. I think it was in the 1800s, right, where it burnt the island down, right, in a very significant way. So that part to me, I kept thinking that when in your report, in terms of the water levels and in terms of the increasing temperature, and this winter was worrisome in that regard as well. And what did you think about this winter?
So that's the thing. Most people don't even think about how the winter actually impacts the summer either. And the fact that we had barely any ice cover this year is pretty significant because the ice reflects a lot of the energy from the sun, whereas water absorbs it. So when the water all absorbs that heat, it basically holds onto it and kind of exacerbates and creates a feedback loop into the next year. So it's like the ice is actually pretty significant in controlling the temperatures that we actually see in the spring and the summer as well. So there's a lot of people who are happy that they didn't have to plow driveways and stuff very often, but it does have an impact on levels of precipitation, even though right now it doesn't necessarily seem like we're having an issue with rain. But who knows how long that'll last, right?
Well, and you bring up a good point. One, I'm one of those guys that wants lots of snow because I have a snow plow business as well. So I had to charge everybody half rates this year. That sucked. But I mean, I obviously didn't have to go out as much. But we were done the ice fishing season. We started ice fishing middle of February. Like we took our shocks out middle of February, right? We were kind of tiptoeing out in the first couple of weeks of February, but not very far. And then we were done. We had the shacks off before March break. So we're looking at 3.5 weeks. The ice was out right at the end of March. So it was absorbing, the lakes were absorbing all of that heat and just basically holding it and still is holding it, right? And regulating our temperature. But that will have an impact on the fishery, on the spawning rates, on the spawning times, right? On how well those fingerlings and hatchlings can survive in terms of, they don't have a whole lot of tolerance, right? In terms of temperature gradient. I mean, if it's too cold, right, no good. If it's, but especially if it's too warm, right, that's the big one. The die off is huge. So, and we see that in everything. I was down turkey hunting, the last week or so for the opener, and usually the first couple of weeks of turkey hunting is really easy. Not really easy. It's never easy, but they're easier to come into the call because they're looking for a mate, right? Like, the snow's just gone, it's muddy and gross out, but now all the turkeys were all henned up. Because the rut, if you will, I don't know what it's called in turkey lingo, I should know, but it seems like they're all paired up really early, right? And that that has a direct impact. The weather does on all of those types of systems. The water system obviously being a huge one for an island because it basically regulates our weather.
Yep.
Right. So you've done some. One of the things I know you do for Manitoulin Streams is outreach, right? So and one of the I don't know if we do this anymore. Do we still do the stream tours?
Yep.
So who does that?
I do most of them, but if I'm not available, Brynn is more than qualified to do them as well because she's been on quite a few herself. So.
What do you do what's a stream tour? Tell me what a stream tour is.
Well, I've mostly just seen the salmon tours at this point, which is during the salmon run when the salmon are all coming into the river to spawn, and we'll take school groups and stuff out there and show them the salmon run and educate them about it and the reds and how to identify them and stuff and why they shouldn't be walking in the river during that time. And
yeah, and I remember as a kid. Now this is an example of what not to do, right? Because as kids, you don't know this. You see fish in the river, you're gonna go chase them. I mean, that's what we did as kids, and we're running up and down that damn river, right? And chasing these fish around and creating havoc, or not really knowing it, but you're disrupting all of the natural things that are happening in the Kag or in any of the river and watersheds in terms of that reproductive cycle. Now they do. I videoed somebody. I can't remember. I think it was Sue, when Sue Mert was working for Manitoulin Streams, because she did a lot of those tours, and they would take out like small groups, right? Families that would book a stream tour with little kids, and take a scoop of dirt and look under a microscope and check out a crayfish.
See all the bugs.
See all the bugs and the, the Daphnia and whatever it is in the water. I mean, it's super cool. Do you still do that in the summertime? Or?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much anybody that reaches out asking for a tour, we give to them. The salmon ones are the largest ones that we've done in the last few years, and we put those out to private groups as well as schools and stuff. And I think over the last couple of years, we've actually seen like 500 students on those tours alone from schools from all over the place. We even had a school from Toronto come 2 years ago, and this past year we had grades JK and SK all the way up to a university class that came out to do it.
And that reminds me, we used to bring a school group here, St. John's Kilmarnock. The island was part of their 5 Worlds tour. And so this school, all of their cohorts would get an opportunity to go like all over the place. Eventually they go to the Galapagos in their later high school years. But one of their trips was here, right, to Manitoulin, where they camp out. We do all kinds of things, cultural awareness. We have dancers come in terms of powwow regalia and all of that kind of thing. They get to participate in all that stuff. But one of the things that they was always a highlight was the Manitoulin Streams tour, right, where they got to go check it out and get their hands dirty and ask questions, right, in terms of, oh, what's this, or oh, I'm not swimming in that, or what's a lamprey, right? And it's great information to have. It's a great opportunity for people visiting the island to participate in, especially if kids are urbanites and don't get a chance to you don't always want to dip your feet into the Thames River, right? Like there's places you don't want to swim, right? And having the opportunity to swim at the pool in the summertime underneath Kagawong, the waterfalls that's a rite of passage for us. I mean, you do it as kids, and it's an awesome experience. And in the fall, come October time, that pool is full of salmon, right? And they're there because of the bioengineering that has taken place through Manitoulin Streams to make that place a more productive place for salmon reproduction and rainbow reproduction and what have you. Everything really, suckers and walleye, and you can see all of that in.
Well, and even beyond that, it's I'd like giving those tours too, because most people think of just the fish, but it's like when you are pulling out rocks and showing them all the bugs and invertebrates and stuff that are in there, people really get an idea of like, this is an entire ecosystem. There's tons of life living in there. It's not just fish. You've got all the food that they're eating. And then beyond that, you've got all like the mink and stuff that are along the shoreline that eat all of those fish, especially the salmon once they're done spawning, because they all die. There's tons and tons of birds and mink and otter and a whole bunch of stuff living along the river that if otters are a little bit harder to see every once in a while, but I've given tons of tours where kids have seen the mink running along the shoreline and dragging out a dead fish that's 3 times their size, right?
Right. Well, yesterday we were having supper and in the dining room, and Diane's like, oh my God, looking behind me, and an eagle had just dropped I just saw it dropping down on the shoreline, like, 40 yards from the window, right? Just disappeared in behind the bank. And I'm like, oh, Granny says, oh, that's got to be a fish there. And, then you see him trying to struggle to flap his wings up. And he had a great big sucker, probably, a 24-incher that he could barely get any loft with, because it was so heavy. But, I mean, when kids get to see and interact with that type of thing and develop an understanding of the interconnectedness of how fish are there and why they're there and how they can be a part of us, right, in terms of whether it's catching one or eating one or catch and release one, right, in terms of the connectedness that we have to that experience. It's important, and it's why Manitoulin Streams is such a valuable organization, not only to Manitoulin, the local population, but also to the business owners in terms of tourism and attracting people here, but also in just the notion of conservation, right? Now, you did something very interesting, or you were working on that project, and it was like iFish, but it wasn't. What was that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's basically an interactive angling map. It's got all of the hiking trails. I might need to be updated because we've actually added a few hiking trails to Manitoulin in the last few years. But all of the hiking trails, all of the boat launches that are on the island, and including aerial photographs of them so that you can actually like see the condition of the launch, see what types of boats actually can fit into some of the lakes. Because as you get out further to the west end, there's a lot of lakes that are accessible, but not like with a full boat. So it's like people could go out canoeing and go kayak fishing and stuff like that. And it also has a decent amount of businesses that are involved in the tourism industry. So whether they be charters or just accommodations and food and stuff like that. So it's essentially a map that you can use if you're thinking about planning a trip to the island to go fishing for a week or something like that, even if you just want to go hiking. But you can use this map to kind of see all of the areas that are available to you, because there actually are quite a few places to go in terms of hiking, fishing.
Absolutely. Now, where do you find that map?
That map is on our website, manitoulinstreams.com.
Yeah, so that's now people get pissed off at me for the TV show, right? In some people, because as anglers, we're pretty protective of information. And I know we talked about this when you were developing the map, and just in terms of these secret spots, right? I remember someone saying this to me while I was fishing the Manitou, right? So the Manitou is the largest tributary on the island, and it flows south into the south shore, into Michael's Bay. And I had someone tell me and say, because we were filming there, I hope this isn't going to go on TV, right? And I'm like, well, why is that? And they're like, well, this is a secret. I'm like, what? How is the largest, like if you're coming fishing on Manitoulin Island, right? I mean, if you're an angler, you're going to look for rivers, number one, and there's going to be 3 big ones that jump out, right? And you're going to have the Minnemoya, right, which empties into Prov, it flows south. You're going to have the Manitou, which also empties into the South Shore, and you're going to have the Kag that flows north. I mean, who in their right mind as an angler would not know that would be a good spot to go fishing, right? So there is no secret there. What we're trying to do, and this is the big thing, it's a big thing for me, is that we're just trying to get people outdoors, right? We're trying to get them to catch a fish. They can let it go, right? Or they can eat it, or they can understand where food comes from and how big of a deal it is for it to get to be this big, right? And what the odds are against that happening, right? Whether it's eaten by a predator, whether it's being affected by some type of a herbicide or an agricultural byproduct.
Invasive species.
Yeah. Oh my God, we got to talk about invasive species. So this is a big one. But okay, so back to that piece of your of this map. It just shows people that they've got options, right? That and as a business owner who, on the island here, like tourism is our business. We've got a few months to try and earn enough to stay afloat, right? And by having that type of information available to people, right, it encourages people to be conservationists, because once they get outdoors, they want to get outdoors more. And they develop an appreciation and a higher degree of respect for the outdoors when they're a participant versus an observer. So I think things like that, you don't want like trespassers and, so it gives public information, right, that people can use to be a better outdoors enthusiast, right? And to increase their odds of catching a fish, right? Or, having a great memory with their family. So I think it's a fantastic organization. idea in terms of that angling map. And I know that was one of your ideas. It was a great one. So, congrats on that one. But okay, invasive species. What's your most favorite invasive species to hate? So I don't know if that's a question.
Well, in the summer we spend a lot of time. Well, Liam doesn't as much, but we spend a lot of time removing Phragmites.
Freaking frag
with Judith and the Phragmites project.
Yeah.
So that one probably.
Why do you hate it so much?
'Cause it just strangles out everything else. Like it has audacity.
I know. It's a bastard, that
It
frag.
thinks it's better.
And the thing is that when it gets established, like it's out of control in no time, right? The one that blew my mind was Wiki, was the Wiki project. Like when they had the Truxor in, like, man, oh man, we took, I don't know how many dump trucks full of frag out of that bay, but it was insane. Now, when I go down south, like,
Everywhere.
it is everywhere, every ditch, and it travels on vehicles, it travels on transports, right? And goes into a ditch and a water system, and that's it. When you see cattails, right? Like if you're driving down south, if you see cattails, they're not going to be there for long, right? It's one of the rare places that frag hasn't taken on.
Actually, ironically, now an invasive cattail is filling in the spots that have been removed, like where Phragmites has been removed. So there's the narrowleaf cattail, and our native one is the broadleaf cattail. And they're hybridizing, and the narrowleaf cattail is filling in sites that were previously heavy with Phragmites that's been removed, and now a different invasive species is colonizing them.
They're tag teaming up, right? The cattails are joining forces to fight this frickin' Phragmites. I go down and I hunt with JR Wetlands in Walpole Island, Bikajwanung First Nation, and that's near like Sarnia. And what used to be a cattail swamp of, like, I don't know how many, 10,000 acres. It's a huge swath of St. Clair. It's just all frag. And in this community, if you're not cutting your grass, that frag is right up to your doorstep. Like, and it's like tiger grass. You're expecting, I'm expecting either an elephant or a tiger to pop its head out of that frickin' Phragmites, because that's what it looks like.
Well, you get 20 feet tall, right? Like, it's huge.
Yeah, and nothing, you're right, Brynn, nothing can get through that. Turtles can't get through it. Ducks, it's sharp as hell, right? It'll go through a hip waiter in no time. And my buddy Josh there had it go right, he fell down and it went right through his hand. It was just basically a knife that was sticking up, and dogs get ripped apart, through that stuff. So I'm with you on the hate for frag, and I know so is Judith Jones, because I take her all over the islands, like out of Duck Islands and whatnot, and those guys are hunting frag all summer long. So yeah, good on Judith. And if you're wondering how to eradicate that, if you have some frag, we have a video on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel with Judith Jones, talking about how to kick its ass. So check us out there. Don't forget to subscribe too while you're on it. That's a big thing for us right now. People are watching our stuff, but they're not subscribing. People, subscribe.
Commit.
Yeah, commit. We'll keep you updated. What about you? Is it the same thing, or do you have a hated invasive?
I think mine's probably the rusty crayfish, just because growing up, I used to love exploring the shorelines and finding the great big blue claws from the virile crayfish, which is a native species and used to be our largest species of crayfish.
And they can get big, like they can get like a little lobster.
Freshwater lobster, yeah. And in recent years, mostly what I see anywhere along the shoreline of Lake Huron is rusty crayfish. And they are just significantly more aggressive in terms of feeding and outcompeting each other. So I would say they're probably the one I hate the most, just because it's hard to look in the water anywhere on the shoreline of Lake Huron and not see them now. Right. But I mean, it's similar with round gobies, but they at least seem to be fitting somewhere into the food chain a little bit these days.
Right. Now, so That's a good one, and that would be my. Other than fried, those are two good ones. I think mine would be that round goby, right? In terms of those little bastards, when you're fishing, you can't fish with live bait.
No.
Yeah, they steal your bait and they drop off the hook.
Yeah, and then they drop off. And even if you are lucky enough to catch one, you can't put it back on. You can't put it back on. If you did, it would catch a fish immediately, right? Especially if you're fishing bass, but you can't put it back. It's like lamprey.
Yep.
You're supposed to kill it.
Right? Cut its head off and throw it on shore.
Yeah. And so and I read, and I don't know if it's right or not, but I read that the most populous fish in the Great Lakes right now, biomass wise, is the goby, right? That the bottom is polluted with them.
Yep.
And the thing is that salmon will eat them, but they don't love them, right? But what does love them? Lake trout. And they will feast on them, right? And I mean, I don't hate lake trout, and I don't mind catching them. I especially like to catch them through the ice, right? It seems like a bigger fight. But when we're fishing for salmon, and this is kind of a I don't know if it's called an oxymoron or ironic, but I'm fishing for an invasive species and ate the native one in terms of the lake trout versus a salmon, right? But the salmon don't feed on the bottom like a lake trout does, and hence, don't eat as many as I think. Maybe they just taste like shit too. I don't know. They're an ugly little fish, right? On top of being invasive, they're ugly, which makes you hate them even more. But I think that would be one of the things that the invasive species that I love to hate is probably, you can tell that by my disdain for their appearance and their whole thing. But then you know what? I was at the Toronto Sportsman Show, and I bought a whole bunch of plastic round goby baits. Right, so someone's getting rich off it because they do catch fish. So invasive species eradication is a big thing for you guys, especially the Phragmites piece and working with Judith Jones, a very worthwhile project and cause. And they've got commercials on our show and stuff like that where it's just like, you know what, and play responsibly, stay on the trails, wash your bikes off, that type of thing, and especially your boats, right, to avoid contamination with frag, but also bringing invasive species like gobies into an inland lake, right? And we don't have them here in Lake Minnemoya, right? Somehow, by some miracle, are they in Manitou?
I haven't heard any confirmed sources saying it. As far as I know, we've done a pretty good job across the island keeping the gobies and the rusty crayfish and stuff out of the inland lakes. Maybe Lake Kagawong, but again, it's like I haven't really heard as much about those lakes as much as like zebra mussel, for example, which for sure are in Lake Kagawong, Manitou, and Minnemoya. Yeah.
Now I remember when and our lake has gone through a transformation in the last a couple of decades, and we get to watch it because we live right here, but the zebra mussels had just a significant. You know what? Maybe I hate zebra mussels even more. That's a good one too. I forgot about them.
Hate them all. They're all bad.
They're so like, I'm so used to them. I forgot it was invasive. But they really wreak havoc, right, on a lake. Now, in a polluted lake, they actually help, right, in terms of filtering out all of those toxins, heavy metals and stuff like that. But for us, it seems like once zebra mussels got into Lake Minnemoya, the walleye fishing got worse and the bass fishing got better. Why is that?
I think it likely has to do because it's like zebra mussels as a filter feeder. They have an impact on the lowest part of the food chain, right? So they're taking out plankton, zooplankton, phytoplankton, and stuff like that, which is taking out the smaller fish. Which generally, so bass will eat smaller fish, but not as much as walleye and stuff like that. Bass are also eating crayfish, all of the other stuff that's on the bottom, right? So I think it likely had to do with the fact that the food source for all of the prey fish for walleye was essentially removed. So, and that's the thing where a lot of people see a clear lake and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful. You can see right to the bottom. But like having murkiness and cloudiness and stuff, it's not always necessarily pollution and dirt. A lot of it is actually just plankton. Right. So it's like when you remove the bottom rung on the ladder of the food chain, it has an impact all the way up, essentially.
All the way up to the top predator, and that's the one we're after. Is the big one, right? The walleye. That makes perfect sense. Does anything eat? What do you do to deal with?
Zebra mussels will eventually kill themselves usually because they overpopulate so much, and then they filter all of the stuff out of the water, and then they just have mass die-offs, and that's when you see them all washing up on the shore. You see the dead zebra mussels because they've overpopulated. All
the shells, and they're sharp as shit, right? Yeah. I saw a kid one time, like screwing around with his brother and take a zebra mussel like that. And dude, it caught, like, it surprised them both. Like they were screwing around. He didn't know it was like a razor blade, and it caught him, like needed stitches. It was a huge cut on him. There was blood and tears. It was horrible. But yeah, you know what I mean? And for that reason, and we've done it too, like we have cottagers here and we tell them, listen, do not get in the water without water shoes, right? You're gonna, and you know, you're gonna cut your feet, right? So yeah, 4 horrible invasive species. You know, when we're looking at, when we look at that boom and bust kind of thing, and I have this conversation with, predator hunters to like coyotes and stuff like that. And they're like, shoot every coyote and you see, right? And the stuff that I've read, and I catch some flack for repeating this, is that the best way to manage coyotes is leave them alone, right? In terms of they'll react to their environment. So with lots of rabbits, right? They're gonna, because if you shoot one and you take it out, that just opens up a home range for another set of coyotes. And if there's lots of game around, they will have more pups. If there's less game around, they won't, right? They won't be as fertile. And what ends up regulating coyotes more than anything is like what you said, is that they get mange, right? There's just so many coyotes around that they eventually infect each other and they have this massive die-off, right? And I know people, fawn killers and stuff like that, but I only ever killed one coyote, and son of a bitch, I felt bad after, right? I was like, I'm not going to eat it, right? And it did look like shit. And the farmer was mad that I wasn't shooting coyotes. And when I did, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do that again, right? Because you can't eat them, right? They're horrible tasting. From everything I've read, there's no way to consume these things, and they stink. If you've ever been up close to a coyote, they're brutal, right? It smells like a skunk. But it's not invasive. Anyway, so Manitoulin Streams is a not-for-profit, right? So we get funded based on our applications for grants and donations and the like. And one of the big things that we do is we run fundraisers. And the jackets and jeans is a big one, right? Tell us a little bit about that event.
So basically, it is just a dinner that it's happened at a couple different locations, most recently at the Little Current Hotel. But it's a dinner and auction. We have generally around 200 tickets that we sell for the dinner, and we get donations from businesses all across Manitoulin Island and even beyond the island in some cases. And we have a live auction, a raffle, a silent auction. I think last year we had the most items that we've ever had, and we had almost 80, I think, items across the board. That's the thing. The raffle tables themselves, it's like they're bundles from a bunch of different businesses. So we had over 100 businesses that actually had donated and contributed to the event.
Now, Brian Ramacco is a big proponent of that. He sits on the board as well and has a ton of connections, obviously, in the industry, in the outdoors world. And I know way back when one of his ideas was to emulate, the Wild Turkey Dinner or the Elk Foundation or the Ducks Unlimited. But when we bring those organizations to the island, right, that money doesn't stay on the island. It goes back to the Elk Foundation and to the wherever, right? So people, outdoors enthusiasts, love going to them because you can win a gun, you can raffle, whatever. I won the cash in the
can of cash.
The can of cash last year. So you buy $50 worth of tickets, and then you go and you put those in the draws, right? Well, I put all my tickets in that little gas can because there was cash in there, and sure enough, my ticket got pulled, and I think I won. I think it was $750. It was a big haul. But there's tons of good deals in there, and I always love the auction, especially, because it's a licensed event, right? So by that time in the night, right, things are, people are there flexing a little bit, and I remember last year I saw that carved salmon, right, or it was a fish, but it was like it was big, it was and it was decent. I'm like, I think I want that, right? I think I want to try and. But what did that? It went for like ridiculous amount of money.
Couple grand. I think like $2,100 it ended up going for, and that was actually carved by Don Tenniswood out of Silverwater. So he's an amazing wood carver.
I was like this. Well, I run a salmon charter. Like, I mean, that would be a great little thing to have. But I was like, $2,100. That's awesome, right? And I remember there was a bit of a bidding war that was going on, and I think it was the wife of the guy bidding. She's like, I want, like, like she was giving him the gears, like, you're getting that, right? So I mean, you get those types of things, and it's for a great cause, right? It is for a great cause. You might find a steal in there. You might get lucky. I did last year. It was a different, not different, but it was the crowd weren't fly fishers, and I'm not a fly fisher, but I want to fly fish, right? And I know how expensive that shit is, right? And so I saw this fly fishing thing go up for sale, and nobody was bidding on it, right? And so I'm like, I'm gonna wait for a little bit to see, like, you're trying to, you have your little thing there, you're gonna say yes, but you want to, like, there to be no interest in it because they started it at like $100,
well below retail,
like 12 times below retail, right? And so I was like, so they said 130, anyone can do 130, and I was like, nobody wants this thing. I ended up getting it. Then I knew this one guy was there, and he's like, frick, I want that. He knew that it was a good one. And we went back and forth for a little bit, but and thank God he was out of work for a little bit, and he had a limit there of $400, and I got that reel and fly rod for $400, and it was $1,000 type of deal. So, not that I wanted to rip Manitoulin Streams off, but I was like, that was a great, right? It was a good deal. People do it for guns, right? They're like, oh, you know what? That would be a good gun if you can get it for $600, that type of thing. And you get that kind of little flavor to it when you're doing that kind of auction. But it's a ton of work, mostly for you guys.
Lots of work. We for jackets and jeans. Well, I mean, same as the event we're doing this year. We start in December of the year before normally, so it's 5 to 6 months of work just trying to coordinate all the different prizes where we're getting them, then picking everything up, and just organizing the actual dinner and everything like that. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and you know what? The beauty part is that it stays local. Right, you know that if you're going there and you're paying for the dinner and you're, buying these things, all of that money is going back into Manitoulin Island, right? And it's going to improve the environment, and it's going to improve, the experience of visiting here and of living here, right? So it's win for everybody, and it's a ton of fun. So we have another one coming up, and this is the big one, the piece de resistance here, is the angling trade fair. So this is more work than I think the jackets and jeans.
It's more.
It's different.
It's different, but it's more just because it's the first time we've ever done it, and it's like Brynn and I have never done anything.
We're not event planners.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to be like when you're
After
done with
the
this
end
job.
of it.
We are now.
So tell us about what the angling trade fair is.
You want me to go? So we're showcasing angling outdoor natural product vendors from across Manitoulin surrounding area. I think we have like 40 to 45 vendors, some of them as big as 20 by 60 feet with side-by-sides, chainsaws, boats, kayaks, big things, and stuff made from the local environment. We have competitions, we have guest speakers, you included.
Yeah, I got to figure out what I'm going to talk about.
And,
Salmon's already gone, so
yeah. Well,
Damn it. That's all I fish for. No, I have an ace up my sleeve. I'm bringing my second captain for the salmon, Greg Cottenham. I've twisted his big arm into standing up there, and this guy can talk for hours on end. He's probably 10 times the angler that I am, and has fished for longer. I'm pretty excited to have him added to the team this year. So I'm just going to be, I told him I'm going to be the eye candy and he's going to be the brains, whatever that means. Okay, keep going. So we got vendors. We've got what else?
Guest speakers, competitions. We have a little bit of a touch of the jackets and jeans stuff. So we have a smaller live auction and a silent auction and raffles still, and a 50-50. And we also have a youth fishing derby, which is going to be walleye. There's going to be a walleye category.
So it's the walleye season openers that weekend.
Is that weekend, right?
And just a biggest fish category of any species with some cool prizes, bait and rods and gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's taking place in Ontario's nice,
Prettiest village.
Prettiest village, which surprisingly is not Chigang. It's Kagawong, right? So the village of Kagawong is hosting this at its
Park Center.
So that's the one halfway down the hill to the right.
It's got the big outdoor covered rink that they just installed.
Right. And the human-sized chessboard thing. Yeah, okay. So I know exactly where that is, which is good because I have to speak there. What else? What's going to happen? There's food.
There's 3 food vendors, but I mean in Kagawong you also have several other businesses and stuff in town that are selling food, like the Kag up at the top of the hill, as well as Main Street Express. And part of the competitions that we've got is also it's called the passport competition. Basically kids and stuff, they can collect their little sheet of paper or their passport at the front gate, and we're going to be giving stamps to a bunch of the businesses and stuff around Kagawong.
Right.
So we're trying to promote people to actually not just come to the event, but actually explore the town itself, right? So the museum's going to have one to kind of get people down there. Maybe they can drum up some donations and stuff from visitors. Chocolate Works, everybody loves chocolate. The Buttercup Ice Creamery, like all these businesses are going to be a part of that competition to try and encourage people to explore the town. I'm going to be giving guided tours as well, one each morning. But we've also even tried to just because Manitoulin is a First Nations place as well, right? So we've got Sunny from Debajamajig is going to be doing Odawa foundational teachings on the Sunday morning.
Cool.
We've got our good friends of Manitoulin Streams, Tina and Josh. They're actually going to be there. Tina's going to have a table with medicinal plants, and she's going to be offering knowledge on all of those medicinal plants, and Josh is actually going to be giving a teaching and a blessing at our opening ceremonies.
Yeah, love Josh.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of First Nations representation as well, just because
that's where we are.
That's where we are, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on. We've got an anchor toss, just people can test their strength, see how far they can throw an anchor.
Okay.
We've got 3 different weights. There's a 5-pound one, probably for kids, a 10-pound one, and then if you're feeling really strong, there's a 22-pound anchor to see how far you can toss it. Me and Brynn,
now, is that on a big swing?
No. We've got specific rules so that nobody hurts themselves or anyone else. Yeah. But for that, the competitions were fun or like planning, because Brynn and I had to test them out all first too, right? So we were down at the beach in Manitoulin throwing anchors around.
Hucking anchors, at the anchor. Awesome, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So, like, how would you? This has always been a question of mine. Come up with the idea to dip red licorice in chocolate.
I can't eat those.
What?
Yeah, I had one a long time ago and then went for a big swim and tried riding my bike up the hill in Kagawong and it all came back out.
See, and to me, that is such a treat. And then I'm like, just when you think that, you couldn't get a better combination, you dip a Ripple chip, regular chip in chocolate. Yeah. Like, they're deadly. It's a deadly combination. So, yeah, hats off to those guys for coming up with that. And then you've got, what's the candy store up?
Boobaloo, yeah.
They're up there as well. So, it is a cute little town. They've got a couple of little art centers there. I know they do the pottery one just up from the harbor center. So yeah, they've got all kinds of cool things to do and see on that weekend. It's the long weekend. It starts in May, so that's like not this weekend, but the weekend after. Yeah. It starts on Saturday morning.
Yeah, Saturday at 10 a.m. So the Saturday it's open 10 to 6, and then Sunday 10 to 4.
10 to 4. Yeah. And then I'm speaking when? Saturday or
Saturday at 12.
Saturday, high noon.
Put it in your schedule.
I better put that in the schedule. I know I missed the last meeting, so and I didn't look at the minutes, so I need to get on top. I need to get my crap together here. But I got a week to do that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and it should be fun. If they want information, they can check our socials or your socials. So the website is
MantoulinStreams.com.
And then you guys have a Facebook page, same thing?
Just Manitoulin Streams.
And Instagram as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. That's great. I love being a part of Manitoulin Streams, albeit a small part. We've done some really interesting work over the last decade in terms of outreach, in terms of getting schools involved, in terms of getting First Nations involved, right? I know at the beginning there was a little bit of reluctance from our part as a First Nation to deal with a provincial types of funding that, it's just always like, we're always wondering, is that the right match? And Manitoulin Streams has performed very well in terms of being culturally inclusive and sensitive to the needs of the community, and always looking to enhance opportunities for all in any of the communities they work with. So a big kudos to Manitoulin Streams for doing that. And then lastly, we always end with a rosebud and a thorn type of thing. So a thorn is something that's a pain in your butt kind of thing, or something you're struggling with resolving. A bud is something you want to learn more about, or you're excited in the coming time. And then a rose is something that's going really well right now. So who wants to go first?
I can go first. Rose probably would be I love doing the outreach stuff and working with all the kids. And unfortunately this year I actually missed the Little Current Fishing Game Club Bass Lake Creek event just because I was in Costa Rica. Oh, poor me. Oh, poor you. Yeah. But that I would say that's probably the most fun event that we kind of do from my perspective, just because of all of the different types of fish that you actually get to see up close and personal. So it's for a walleye hatchery, but you don't just see walleye. There's normally tons of perch in there, tons of pike, dogfish. Sometimes there's been ling in there. So it's just a very cool thing for the kids to actually get to see all of these fish that are swimming around us, right? The bud is related to that in the fact that because we've been doing so much extensive work with the kids and stuff on Manitoulin for years now, I'm looking forward to how the next generation is going to basically appreciate nature more, hopefully, than previous ones, and all the work that they'll be able to kind of get done just because they're dedicated and attached to it, right? It's like they're a part of the environment and they can actually see that now. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from all of the kids in the future. Thorn is probably funding. It's like their funding sources have changed dramatically over even the 5 years that I've been with Manitoulin Streams. And of course, every 4 years it changes as well, as you've got a new or different government coming in and kind of wanting to put their mark on stuff. So yeah, funding for sure, because there's a lot of application writing, which is not the fun part for me. That I like the outdoors stuff. And with all of those applications, there's midterm reports, there's final reports, and all of that stuff as well. So Thorn would definitely be changing funding sources through time.
Well, and I think Saya would back you up on that. Saya, is our coordinator, and she's like, that's what she does, right? Is trying to find money, and constantly, putting pockets of funding together. It's 5,000 from this and 10,000 from that, and then you get a big one of 60,000, and and these projects are incredibly expensive.
Well, and they're just getting more expensive too.
Yeah, getting contractors in and the bids and all of that kind of thing is definitely I can see that as a big thorn. All right, Brynn, what about you? A rosebud thorn. What are your something you're excited about, you love to do? A bud is something you're looking forward to, and a thorn is the pain in the butt kind of thing.
I would say my rose has been this position, environmental marketing, to plan this trade fair, was not really what I wanted to do and not really what I saw myself doing this past year, but I would say that it's gone really well and unexpectedly well, and I hope that the final product also turns out well, and that this will have been a good, worthwhile experience for me that I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be at the start.
Awesome.
My bud is getting back outside for the summer, because I've been in the office and like on the phone and on my emails and stuff all winter, and I'm excited to get back out what I know to be doing for Manitoulin Streams, which is being outside with our summer students and stuff.
Awesome.
And Liam kind of stole my thorn. My thorn is also funding.
I was gonna say he's your thorn, but
yeah, well, that too.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly funding. Like, there's not a lot of funding available for the North. For the things that we do, it seems like there's less and less available, and it's in smaller and smaller chunks. So Say is having to put together so many more small chunks of funding from all these different people, which just makes so much more work, and it seems like it's just getting more complicated.
Yeah, it is, and hopefully, if we can get some political representation to really take a look at that and understand that it's the people that love the outdoors in especially in rural settings that are doing a ton of the work, like the actual work, to keep these spaces alive and to enhance the environments and create places not only for species and fish and wildlife to thrive, but also for people to come and visit. Right, it's a huge part of the economic structure in the province of Ontario, and we should be noting as such. So all great answers. For me, a rose is things that are going well. I mean, I'm happy to be a part of Manitoulin Streams in a small way, as being on the board. I am looking forward to the talk, and the thorn is, I have no idea what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll think of something. If you know me.
Well, hey, bear hunting. If
I'm never short of words.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got lots to chat about in terms of angling and in terms of what Manitoulin has to offer. And I think that's a big thing, is getting people here. We continually try and do that to create a relationship not only with the environment but also with the food that we're eating, and create this notion of food sovereignty. I think that's a big deal. But I want to thank you guys for coming and stopping in as a part of your busy day. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so I'm not going to keep you for very much longer. But as usual, we'll be out there fueling our passion, fueling the fire, and getting outdoors. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
for having us.